Now for step 3, it's going to be when we're first adding the first layer of color. And I would like to create a new layer underneath this one. Now if you're working on paper, of course you won't have layers. So you can, that depends on the medium you're working with. Based off your line art, you can start adding watercolor or pencil, for example. Now since we're working on digital, we'll create a new layer and switch the brush to a hard round pressure size brush. This new layer for the color, for me it's named layer 22, it's going to be underneath our line layer. And we're going to start with the color scheme. So my character is probably going to be, maybe have this skin color, and as I mentioned in my previous video, all human skin colors, at least natural skin colors, are a shade of brown. Now, the base color, these are going to be the base colors to which we're later going to add shading and like glints of light during the rendering stage. So this is where you develop the basic color scheme of your character. In this case, I want my character's pants to be red, make a darker red. This really depends on what you like. We're just doing this with a hard brush, just coloring in, what our character's color will be. For their clothing. And I wanted to mention, first of all, you can keep your character black and white and go on to draw shadows with black or darker gray, and in this case you don't need the coloring step, or you can keep the coloring step, but instead of different colors you will use a shade of gray for each component of your character and their clothing. There's an even faster method for coloring, and it involves using only a brush that's opacity and flow varies with pressure. And in this case, you will have to be aware that if you add a background behind the character, the background might show through, and I can make a separate video on that even quicker method. Now you can add some values, different values for shading in this stage as well, especially if it's a very dramatic difference, like the inside or outside of a garment. So like in this way, for example, where there's a very large difference, though most of the shading will happen in the next stage. And it's a good idea to already start having, an idea of where your light is coming from. That will determine where the shadows lie. In this case, maybe my lighting is coming from this, from this direction, roughly. Right, so that means the shadows will be in the opposite, mostly in the opposite side of the character. Like so. And like so. Just try to color within the lines, unless there's a very specific reason you don't want to. For example, for watercolor, sometimes it looks a little bit messy, and it's supposed to a little bit offset. The effects with that can be pretty cool. I'm not going to be coloring in the eyes at this stage because they're going to be largely obstructed anyway in the next stage. You can if you want to. I personally don't recommend it. A bit of shadow here since we know where our light is coming from. Okay, and with this we've basically completed the third step of our character. You know what, I'll add a little bit of... no, I won't. Okay, so we've completed the third step of our character. Design here with step 3, the basic color. And we're almost done. So I'm going to again duplicate this layer. So after, I'm going to duplicate it, but first I'm going to merge my line layer with my color layer. In Photoshop, this is done through this menu right here. Next, I'm going to duplicate it again just so that we can have our reference here. And finally, we're going to step for the final character. Going to increase the size a little bit. Okay.